So I hope this is a challenge and encouragement to you to protect young people as best you can, to speak truth into their world. So now let's listen to see what we culled out of Frank Turek's article on transgenderism. Welcome to the Bible Professor Podcast, edition 6 or installment 6, our Christian Apologetics Journal. And the last article in here was one that was given to us by Frank Turek of Cross Examine. Welcome, Frank.
It's great to be here, Mel. I haven't seen the article yet. Can I see it?
Yeah.
What did I say?
Yeah, right. This is actually a section from Frank's book, Correct, Not Politically Correct, How Same-Sex Marriage Hurts Everyone, but his updated 3rd edition, which you need to pick up, has a whole section at the end on transgenderism. But Frank, my main question for you is why you felt the need to add a section on transgenderism?
Because it's exploded into our culture ever since Obergefell, the Supreme Court decision where the Supreme Court imposed same-sex marriage on all the states illegitimately, I might add, because marriage is not a federal issue, it's a state issue. In any event, it's just exploded. And there used to be about 1 in every 10,000 men who had gender dysphoria. They thought they were women. And now there's been an explosion of young girls thinking they're boys. I mean, like a 6,000% explosion over the past decade or so. And Abigail Shrier, who wrote the seminal book called Irreversible Damage, she's not a Christian, but she was pointing out how the transgender craze is seducing our daughters. She said, Mel, in some schools she's visited, 30% of the girls claim to be trans. Mm-hmm. How did we go from 1 in 10,000 men to 3,000 and 10,000 women?
Social media, right?
It's a social media contagion. It's transmitted through the iPhone, through the droid. Mm-hmm. That's where people are getting this from, and it's dangerous because it's ruining young lives.
It is. And you started out, this is a great example, but maybe you can go back to this for a moment. You started out with the conversation debate you and Michael Brown had. Mm-hmm. You asked these lesbians, I think, you were debating if they loved you or something like that.
Well, yeah, we were debating at Southern Evangelical Seminary. This had to be 5 or 6 years ago. The question, does love require tolerance and approval? Something like that. In other words, does love require approval? If you got to love somebody, you have to approve of what they do. And of course, Michael Brown and I were saying, no, you can love somebody and not approve of what they do, because that's what you're supposed to do. If someone wants to do evil, you're supposed to oppose what they do. And of course, the other side, the LGBTQ side, was saying, no, if you're going to love somebody, you have to approve of what they do. So at one point, I turned to them and I said, do you love us? And they said, yes. And I said, do you approve of our position? They said, no. I said, you just lost the debate. That's what we were debating. We were saying that you can love somebody and not approve of what they do.
Yeah, and people do not understand that. Even some Christians do not understand that point.
Right.
It's bizarre. Frank, one of the most powerful things in this entire section in this chapter you gave for our journal is, to me, one of the most powerful things is the extended quotes from Scott Nugent.
Yeah.
Can you mention this guy a moment, or how you caught on to this guy person who had detransed? Yeah, and gone through so many problems, physical problems.
Yeah, well, this is a person that started as a woman, tried to become a man, and she's still trying to live as a man, but she has just found it just debilitating, because you can't do it. You can't change your biology, right? You can change your mind, but you can't change your biology. And yet people try, instead of changing their mind, they try and change their biology, which is impossible. And the quotes that this lady gives about what she had to go through, including bouts with sepsis and antibiotics for months and all sorts of failed experiments, reconstruction. It just doesn't work. People are they're butchered. And which is why Chloe Cole, who was a teenager, and still is actually, but she was a teenager in California when the doctors basically cut off her breast when she was like 15. Mm-hmm. And now she's 19. She's suing her doctor. She said, because you've done Nazi-like experiments on me.
Yeah, I've seen an interview.
Yeah, and I couldn't consent to it. I didn't have informed consent at 15. And she points out that most of the people struggling with trans in her generation have other comorbidities. In other words, they're depressed. They're full of anxiety. They have some other mental health struggle, and transgenderism is a result of that. It's just downstream from that. In fact, she was diagnosed with autism after they cut her breasts off.
Mm-hmm.
So
Yeah.
this is tragic stuff. You can change your mind. You can't change your biology.
Yeah.
Right.
And you had a section on suicide and gender dysphoria.
Mm-hmm.
And what do you say to those people? What did you say to those people who say, well, you people who are, trying to convert them back, conversion therapy or whatever, people like us, Christians, you're the ones that are contributing to their suicidal tendencies.
Yeah, nonsense, because even in places where transgenderism is fully embraced, the suicide rate is still much higher than the general public. In fact,
Right.
some of the data show that if you have this gender dysphoria, you're 13 times more likely to commit suicide. But remember, it's not just gender dysphoria. There are other issues associated with it, depression, anxiety, whatever.
Mm-hmm. That's right.
In fact, 2/3 of the people that have gender dysphoria have some other mental health issue. But after the surgery, 10 years after the surgery, the most comprehensive study ever done shows that the suicide rate is 20 or 19 times higher than the general public. So the surgery doesn't help. It worsens the issue. That's the problem people don't seem to recognize. A parallel to transgenderism, as Dr. Paul McHugh, a psychiatrist from Johns Hopkins, said, would be anorexia, right? If someone is anorexic, they have a mismatch between their biology and their psychology, okay? Yeah. They think they're overweight, but they're dangerously underweight. We would never affirm that person by saying, yeah, you are overweight. Let me get you liposuction.
That's right.
We would say, honey, you need to change your mind. Your mind is causing you to think things that are false. So we need to treat you with psychiatry, with prayer, with whatever it is, medication, but not surgery.
Exactly.
We need to change your mind, not your body. You don't need liposuction.
That was a very strong point in your chapter. Like, why are we not getting the people the psychiatric or psychological help that we do with other
Well,
issues?
because sex is off limits now.
Why do we think it's the hardware and not the software?
Right. That's right.
Because the hardware is not going to change you.
Sex is off limits. You can't, whatever people want to do sexually, you can't change your parents.
And I'm not sure, I can't remember if it's the Scott Nugent or another person's testimony in there, but they actually said at the end of the day, it's about
money. That's what she said.
It's about the money.
Yeah, because big pharma, if you try and transition, you become a lifetime consumer of big pharma. You need to take hormones forever because your body doesn't want to go in the direction you want it to go in.
Right.
So yeah, you're on all sorts of medical treatment forever. Another analogy to this is if your daughter came to you and said, "Hey, Dad, I'm a mermaid," you wouldn't take her off the coast and drop her in the ocean. Right. You would say, "Hey, honey, your mind's playing tricks on you."
Yeah. A final point, Frank, you had transitioning makes matter worse, which you already makes matters worse. You already covered some of that, but you've got maybe a dozen and a half bullet points here. Where did you got these from the American Psychiatric Association?
Yes.
These are other disorders that they don't do surgery for. They treat them with medication.
Yes. Yeah. Read a few of those.
Personality disorder, post-traumatic stress disorder, sleep-wake disorders, social communication disorder, mild neurocognitive disorder, obsessive compulsive, eating disorders, internet gaming disorder, conduct disorders, somatic symptom disorder.
Those are all mental problems that need mental health care. They don't get surgery for them.
Yeah.
Now, some people, if overweight, may get bypass surgery, but that's an exception.
Yeah.
Most of the time, you got to say, hey, you can't outrun your fork. You need to stop eating so much. Okay. So, but yeah, for a mental health issue, surgery is not the answer in most cases.
Right.
And we're trying to say that if you get somebody surgery, that's going to fix their mental health problem. No, it's not. That's not what the data show. And of course, you hear this all the time. There are these infinite number of genders out there. No, there's only two genders. And we know that in two ways. First of all, if I'm a man and I think I'm a woman, I have to have some idea what a man is and some idea what a woman is to know I have gender dysphoria. Also, if I try and make the so-called transition, which is biologically impossible, but if I still try and do it, I have to have some idea what a man is and some idea what a woman is to do so. So transgenderism would be impossible if it weren't for fixed genders. You wouldn't even know you had gender dysphoria, nor could you transition if the genders were completely fluid. There are an infinite number of ways you can think about yourself,
Right.
but there's only two ways you can be, as a male or a female.
Yeah.
Leaving out the very rare instances of birth defects. We know about that. But you're male or female. And look, this is true in the whole mammalian world. You either can produce a sperm or an egg. And if you can't produce either, it's an incapacity. There's no third thing you can produce.
That's right.
Right? So you're either a male or you're female, but you're not anything else. And so this is just basic logic. And I think tragically, the LGBTQ community fails to recognize these contradictions, or wants to fail to recognize them. Although there are some in the community that are going, hey, if the T's get their way, that there are no genders, we don't exist.
There you go.
Yeah, because
in the LGBT.
Yeah. You can't be lesbian, gay, or bisexual, even heterosexual if there are no genders.
No,
right?
Another good point from Frank's section in his book, Correct, Not Politically Correct. Frank, people just need to learn to think and think well.
Go to SES for that. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. Let me close up with this quote, a couple lines. You said, when cultural trends and political ties turn against what is good, true, and beautiful, I pray that you and I will faithfully go in the other direction to fight evil and serve others by doing good. Let us do what is right and lead the results to God, no regrets. I thought that was a great ending.
Amen.
Amen.
Let's
Thank
do
you,
it.
Frank,
Thanks,
for joining me. Volume 18 of the Christian Apologetics Journal. Also see Frank Turek's book, Correct, Not Politically Correct, the 3rd edition with the Transgenderism section added on, crossexamine.org. Thanks,
Great.
my friend.
Thanks, brother.
Yeah.